Hello friends and everyone, welcome back to Netcode-Hub channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about how we can authenticate our microservices with JWT. Now, let me first ask you, if you have been creating microservices, how do you authenticate each service? Do you create a scheme? And also, do you register the services for each and every API? Well, if you have been doing that, then today I'm going to help you streamline it. Create a common shared library which will be shared among all the services. And all that you need to do here is to add the service and add the attribute, and that is all. You are done. So let's see how we can do it. But before we jump right to the Visual Studio, make sure you do subscribe to this channel if you haven't done that. After watching this video, if you are okay with it, then don't forget to give me thumbs up. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Now, on my screen, I am having two demo projects. One is for product API and the other one is for other API. So I have these services in my microservices, okay? Now, in that, currently I can access each and every one without being authenticated. So anybody can create, anybody can perform all the kind of operations on each, and that is bad. So we must have a way to protect this from access. Okay. Now, within that, we need to use authentication to handle that. Before you can perform any operations, we want to see that, well, do you have the mandate to do it? If yes, then you can go ahead. And that is where the authentication steps in. So for now, let me share my screen. We can run both projects and see that they are working, and now see how we can authenticate them without duplicating code, but rather having a single library to handle this authentication. Okay, so from the screen, I'm having this product API. I'm also having this other API. Now, in my microservices, I have only these two services. It could be more, it could be less. Let's stick to these two services here. Let's give each a run and see that each service is actually active before we tackle the authentication. So when you look at the screen, you can see from here, I'm having my other API endpoint here, and I also have a product endpoint. Now I can just go into the other API and I'll try to make an order. Let's say the orders that I have made, I can just go and I'll get all. Now let's wait for the connection to be created. Yes, and I already have it. So these are the others, and you see I'm not authenticated, but well, I can access the system. The same thing applies to for create, update, and delete. I can do all. If I go to product 2, I can do same. From this, I can just click on get to get all product in the system. And this is not the best. You know, when you create a system, you must have an authentication mechanism to protect users or to restrict users from accessing a certain part of the system. So this, we want to create a single code base for authentication, which will be identity and JWT for both services. Now, since we're going to create account and I'm logging in to generate a token, it's better that we create or we handle that from a single API. So let's create one API which will be responsible for creating and logging in of user. So let's do that. So if I create another API, it means that in a microservices, we are having 3 services in it, which is the product API, other API, and then authentication API. So let's do it. Let me launch my Visual Studio, and then we want to leave this here and create new project where it's going to be web API, and this is e-commerce authentication, and then I can click on create to get this project created. Before we continue on to create this authentication API, I want us to create the endpoint, not the endpoint, the shared library for authentication. So it is going to be a class library. You can just search from here, C# class library. You can choose that, and let's give it a name. Once the project is created, we need to install a package. So let's do it. And that is the authentication.jwt bearer. Let's get this package installed. And then we can go and create authentication service. So let's modify this class, the default class created for the service. So you can see that when you have a look from the service that we have created, we're going to be using this service in all the other services that we're going to implement authentication in. It's a matter of installing the package, and then we want to add this as authentication, whereby we specify our scheme. Then we want to add a JWT bearer. We want to validate the audience, the issuer, the lifetime of it, in case later on you want to introduce first token. Then also we want to specify the issuer and the audience, so we can get it from this config, a section known as JWT, and now a key of issuer and a key of audience. You want to get their values, and then you want to specify the key from here. So we have the key right here, and now here we're using the key as key. Yeah, the key is key. Okay, so this is what we need. Now, with this piece of code, you need not to repeat this all the time in all your services. Once you have it in a Excel library like this, you can keep it. You can actually even build it as a NuGet package that you can install in all the other services, and it's going to fit and work. Now, let's say we're not going to run them as packages. You want to have them over here, and we're going to add them as existing projects, add the references, and there we go. Let's see. So now that we have this created, all that you're going to be doing is go back to, we can minimize this, go to authentication, go to our solution, and in here, we want to add, click on the solution, then add existing project, authentication service. Let's open it and add this project. Let's add this project to this authentication project. Now we go to dependencies and add project reference, and then you make sure you choose a service. And then we can go to the program.cs, and in here we can go and add this JWT service. And that is all. So in all the services, if you want to add JWT authentication service, all that you need to do here is to add this line of code, and you got it. That's amazing, right? Now let's go and also, since you're going to be using Identity Manager to create user and a login user, let's also add an Identity Manager service here. So for Identity Manager, we need to add Identity Manager with our default identity user. So currently we are not extending our identity user. If not, we'd have used that extended class. But for now, I want to use the default. Then I want to also use the same default for the role. And then we need to add an entity framework store. And in there, we need to pass on this application DB context. We haven't created that. We're going to create that soon. And also we need our role, since we're going to be adding rows with this. Let's create our DB context. So now that we have this created whereby we specify identity user and we install the package, we can go to a program.cs file and I'll make reference to this. And now we see it's solved now. So we have identity manager service registered. We have our token on the JWT service also registered here. And the next thing that we're going to be doing is to create our DTOs and create our controller to endpoint to create and now to log in. Let's do that. But before we can do it, we have this authorization. We need to make sure we have authentication first. So app dot, you're going to have authentication and then we have authorization. We need to also add authorization service. Now that we have this set, we are good. We can go ahead and implement our login. So in our controller, we have a default weather forecast, and I'm going to use the same controller for that. So when you have a look at this, we have in this first endpoint which is going to register user. Now that we are done with this, we're going to work on our login. So when you have a look with our generate token method, that is the normal stuff that we do. And I believe you know this. We get our key, our credentials as we specified in the configuration, that's in our service. Then we need to create our claims for this specific user. So we have 3 claims here, which is the ID, the email, and then the row. Now in the row from the login, we check in to see in case the username starts with admin. This is not actually the best, but it's a scenario for you to understand that you can add row to that. Now we add row based on the initial. So if you start with an admin, that means that user is an admin and we want to add the row of admin. Else, we're going to be adding as what? User. Great. The next thing that we're going to be doing is to generate our token. And here we specify all these parameters that we need in order to make it work once we add our expire date and now the credentials. All right, so this is going to return a string to that, and that is what you are returning as. Okay, so now that we are good here, I think we're having an issue. Okay, we need to return bad request to get rid of that. Okay, so we can test this out. But before we can test this, we need to make sure we have our JWT session and also the audience and the issuer specified. So we can do that from the solution. We go to app.json, then we can paste it here. Now we need to create, let's see, when you go to the program, we did not register our DB connection, right? So we want to use SQLite for this authentication. So meaning we need to install that package too. Let's do that and add our connection to make it work. So once you have this done, we can go ahead and now add it. So here I am adding the database name as authentication.db. We can specify that in the app settings and I'll grab it. The demo, so I think we can maintain this one. Then after we are done with this, I think we are through. We can run this and check this out. And then add migration. Before we do that, I think we need to also install tools package. So before we run them, when you check this product API, I think from this authorized attribute, we need to specify root at default. So row equal to admin. Okay, so we have only one over here. And now let's check for the other API too, whether we did same. There's our other API. And now you see we have the same. So we need to correct them. So that is a row from here and same. Okay, now we are good. So let's test our endpoint first. That authentication. So we can log in and get our token. So this is authentication. Now with this authentication, let's go and run this authentication. So we have this. We can grab this. Then in our body, we can go to raw and check the JSON. We need to specify email and password. So now we have our token. Let's grab this token. Before we move on, now we have our token here, so we can close this service. And then let's get the product service. This is the product service. Let's run this. Now we can check it up from here. So we have this presentation, and in this, we want to get product. So if I click on send, we are having 401 because we did not add a token, right? So here, I'm going to minimize this. That is the address. I can just, okay, so let's minimize this. Now in this, let's open a new tab, which is get. And then let's grab there's the address. You can grab it from here. This is get. Then it's API and then product. That's the controller. Now from headers, let's go and add authorization. Let's grab our key from here. This is our token. And then we can have it in the form bearer. Then let's send and see whether we're going to have the product list. Yes, we have. So you can see we have been able to authenticate ourselves by providing the token generated from our authentication API to this product API. Now you can try your hands on the other API and it's still going to work. So that is it, and I'll make this source code available so you can just grab it and have time to go through. If you have any issue to let me know in the comment section and I'll be available to assist you. All right, so until then, take care and see you in the next video.